So guys, I'm super excited because I'm bringing you a game that I am hyped about, right? And you can see that I really believe in this. The game is Reign of Terror, and this is a Solana video game that's coming out pretty soon. So essentially what this game is, it's essentially like an MMO game, but it's very similar to gameplay mechanics that you see in XCOM 2, EVE Online, and it has a very cyberpunk slash Asian feudal society kind of vibe to it, right? So with this game, it's releasing in Q2 2022. The publisher is Red Door Digital. And if you look at their website, the first thing you'll see is they have this trailer right over here. So let's just watch that real quick. So you can see they actually have some pretty cool gameplay footage. So the gameplay footage actually looks really cool. So this is the gameplay teaser. You can find it on their YouTube as well. So that's the first thing that caught my eye, is that the actual footage looks pretty interesting. This looks like a fun game to play. Now, obviously, once you do see something like that, the second thing you gotta look at is who's the team behind this, because it's pretty easy to create a cool looking trailer. It's really hard to build that into an actual game. So if you look at their team, Joseph's the founder. He has 10 plus years experience working in the gaming industry. He's been mostly in the marketing arena, but he's just been involved in the gaming world quite a bit. So he's basically worked as a community manager at a bunch of places. And with these, he's worked with a lot of high-level teams. So if you actually look at his LinkedIn, he's worked at this Global Trends, which is a consulting company in the video game space. And they've worked with ByteDance, Tencent, NetEase, and a bunch of other big Chinese companies, right? So Tencent is obviously the one that's like the biggest ones. And then before that, he was the content community operation manager at Tencent Games. So he actually worked on this game called Arena of Valor. Essentially, Arena of Valor, as you can see, it has 360 subs. This is a really popular game. It's pretty huge. So he was a community manager there and worked there, and he's had a lot of game experience. So I've actually, to give you full disclosure, I've talked to these guys, right? Because I was actually considering working with them on a marketing position. I ended up saying no just because of the fact that I have a lot of projects and things that I'm looking at, so I don't really have a lot of time right now to be working on projects. So I have talked to their team one-on-one. I've had a couple calls with them, and I can tell you that Joseph, he's the founder. He's the guy who's driving this thing ahead, and he is the one who has the basically a big, he's basically bringing together all these experts to really build this game. So basically, Joseph, great founder, and then the CTO is Sivan, right? Sivan, again, is very experienced on the CTO role. So his past experience includes working as chief technology officer on a deep tech VC kind of firm. He's worked as a technical director at Digital Domain, at Three Glasses, which is essentially, from what I understand, kind of a VR company. And then he's worked on games for the military, and again, a lot of AR, VR, and AR tech stuff that he's worked on. And then he was also technical director at Electronic Arts. He worked at New Era Entertainment, which is a MMO publisher. It keeps going on and right. Like you can see, he's been working in the industry for a long time, and the guy has 15 years of experience working in gaming as well as VR and AR, right? And obviously he's equipped to be a CTO. Now, the creative director, he's worked on IPs such as Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad. And if you look at his ArtStation, it's freaking mind-blowing. Like, this guy's work is incredible. Like, look at this stuff. It's this guy is top notch, right? Incredible work right here. So Visk, I don't know how to say his name. I've talked to him as well. He's got the experience of being a real top-notch creative director. Then they have a head of operations who obviously he has his LinkedIn. Julian's their art lead. They have Alvin, who's their game design director, who's ran his own studio for 10 years. And with all these guys, you look at their LinkedIns, they all check out. You can research them as much as you want. If you look at Julian Core, for example, as the art lead, you can see that not only was he he's working at art lead, he worked at Ubisoft for 14 years, right? Like 14 freaking years. So these guys are an all-star team. They are top-notch, which is one of the reasons why I'm super excited about this game. Now, in terms of investors, they also have some incredible investors. So not only do they have Engine Starter, which is obviously Engine is this huge blockchain gaming kind of infrastructure company, and they also have Maven Capital, they have Lucid Blue. So all of these guys, if you look into their websites, these are legitimate investors, right? They are really, really high-end investors. They're not just these anonymous investors who invested into one or two projects. These guys have legitimate websites, they have legitimate, like for example, docs teams and so on. So one thing I like to look at is the quality of the investors, right? You can tell when a company has great investors by just looking at the websites of the investors, right? So when investors are fully doxed, they have in-depth websites, they have investment thesis, those are usually good signs. And then you can also look at which companies they invest in, right? So let's talk about their core game loop, right? So essentially the basic game loop is you have a team, right? You set your team, you complete missions, you earn credits and cores, you obtain and level up your items, you level up your team, and you ascend your agents, right? Then your advanced loop, which is the more advanced version, is, okay, now instead of just worrying about teams, now you have these safe zone land plot NFTs. You can obtain building blueprints, you can build facilities, obtain resources, and then support guild and alliance activities. And then the hardcore loop is you are buying these land plots in the terror zone where your opponents can raid you and attack your land. You can raid opponent land plots, you can defend these land plots, you can participate in guild and alliance wars, right? So there's essentially this whole game loop where you can start out as like one small team and eventually go up to being, basically having land in the terror zone and basically being part of these big guild and alliance wars. So essentially, the way the game works is you start out from the brutal dregs of the city with close quarter fights to actually the grand theater of war. So you start out playing, kind of being a foot soldier, having a team of foot soldiers, and then you eventually start basically being one of the higher end people, and where you're kind of really affecting the whole, battle, right, in the whole alliance. So they do have a pretty good lore and system set up, so we'll get into the lore in a bit. Now, one thing I do want to mention is play to earn is a big part of this game. So they want to build a really big NFT economy, and essentially they want to allow NFTs to be, not only obviously use them to play the game, but you can also upgrade them and lend them. So lending is a really big piece of this game as well. With the gameplay modes, there's player versus environment and player versus player. So player versus environment is a big part of their basically their game, because that's how you onboard new players, right? So you want to have easy to play player versus environment game modes, right? These essentially allow people to kind of get acclimated to the game, and you essentially, when you complete the mission, you can either get 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars. So 1 star is you barely make it, you get small rewards, and you get lower level items. 2 stars means that you did really well, and you get parts, components, and cores. And 3 stars means you've mastered the mission, and you get rarer parts, components, cores, and some credits, as well as crucial items for higher level fusions. And you also can get basically these extra missions unlocked, right? So if you do really well, you will get these, for example, a tower chest mission. Now with these single player missions, you can basically have, these hacking missions, you have co-op defense survival missions where you play with another player, you have to survive waves of enemies attacking you. And then there's story-based missions as well, which is kind of like essentially your single player game mode, right? Now, obviously that's kind of how you get onboarded into the game, but really the big key focus is the player versus player missions. So player versus player is where you get the most XP, you'll get the, Hero Pass XP points. This is where you really earn. So you both have ranked and unranked games. Ranked games, you obviously have this whole ELO and point-based system, and then unranked play is you get lower rewards, or you get no rewards. It's unclear because they say rewards are slightly lower, but over here they say no rewards are given out. So it's a little bit unclear because over here it says that you get slightly lower rewards, and over here you said no rewards, so it's unclear. But then the ranked play is where you really get more rewards. You get XP, you get Hero Pass reward points, and so on. Now you also get 5 flags battles, which is a kind of a capture the flag kind of gameplay mode. You get racing missions, so you essentially have a racing game mode, and this is a simulated gameplay session. This is just purely based on racing skill, like your basically a racing attribute. So this isn't something where you control the race, but you kind of get to see the outcome of the race based on your points. And then you also have rescue missions where you essentially have to rescue an agent, and if you had your agent, which are like your characters, get kidnapped, you can rescue them using this way. You can also tailor the game's wins conditions and basically modify the gameplay modes a bit. Now, the way the gameplay works is you can basically decide your squad makeup, right? So it's a variety of units with different roles, so you kind of have to combine them in different ways, and you can drag and drop the units, and you can essentially choose to control your units manually, or you can have them be fought by your basically your NFTs automatically, right? So that's cool because you do have the ability to have manual gameplay in there where you control your units, but then you can also let them just fight and do it automatically, right? So they have that ability. Now, a couple of things about the gameplay that's pretty interesting is that there's this whole fog of war system where the map is unseen and you need a visual line of sight to spot the enemies. And then you also have 5 infantry units, 1 vehicle units, and an auxiliary units, right? So you basically have that combination of units. Now with the default player versus player game, which is the ranked play, you also have this whole objective of destroying the enemy's base, and the winner is whoever damages the enemy's base the most. So overall, the gameplay seems really interesting. It kind of is like more of a top-down aesthetic. It reminds me of just looking at the images and so on. It does have kind of a slightly very unique kind of vibe where it's like cyberpunky, but also reminds me of Mass Effect a bit, but from top down. So that's interesting. Yeah, overall the gameplay actually looks really fun, looks really interesting, engaging with a lot of complexity. Now let's quickly talk about the game economy loop, because this is obviously really important for a play to earn game. So the main on-chain currency is ROT, right? And there's a total supply of 2 billion. And essentially the way the economic flow works is you will earn both cores and credits for completing missions, right? And then you can consume your in-game credits to earn on-chain ROT. So it seems like the credits are used to exchange for ROT, and seems like probably the cores as well. But the cores, the main things they do is improve your agents, vehicles, equipment, weapons, buildings, and defenses, while credits are for buying lower level items and then can be exchanged for ROT, right? So essentially, the better you do at this game, you will be able to exchange your credits for ROT, which is an interesting currency name. To reiterate, cores are mostly used for upgrading things. Credits are used for exchange into ROT, but then they're also used for buying lower level items. And then cores can also be interchanged with credits at a lower exchange rate. So cores really are for upgrading. And then Imperial Pass is a program, right? And essentially you earn passive income while receiving rewards for being active in the game. And you can enroll into the Imperial Pass by staking. And also there is a version of ROT, which is SROT, which you get when you stake ROT and own land NFTs. So when you have land NFTs and you have ROT and you stake your ROT, you get SROT, which then allows you to basically, it's a governance token, right? So you can basically vote on the gameplay decisions and help decide the direction of the game, right? Like they're going to build a DAO eventually, so that's going to come into that as well. The way the land works is there's different zones, right? So essentially you have free land to tier 2, tier 1, and then VIP land, right? So different tiers of lands provide different resources, and land plots can be built upon to provide specific additional types of bonuses. And land plots also have energy points, right? So that determines how many facilities you can construct, because each building consumes energy points. So with the land, as I mentioned, there's two zones. There's a safe zone and terror zone. Safe zones generally yield a lot less energy points and resources, but the terror zone yields a lot more, but they can be raided by enemy players, so it's not as safe. You could lose a lot on that, right? Now there's this whole dynamic of where, you know, people can raid each other, and then there's risk, there's reward. They're basically your agents, right? Could be, if they try to invade somebody else's land, they have a chance of being captured, and then when they're captured, essentially you can execute them, so it reduces the enemy's morale. Interrogation means you can get information out of them, and then basically there could be ransom, so you could charge ransom for giving back their agents. So there's this whole interesting gameplay dynamic of agents and, you know, invasions, right? Now, not only is there individual land plots, there's also guild and alliance land plots, right? So if you are part of a guild, you can basically, as a guild, own land, and that's really interesting. Now the cool thing with these buildings on land, so this is basically an in-game, looks like in-game footage, but essentially that's what it looks like in-game when you have kind of a plot of land. But you can build defensive facilities, so you can improve your land's defensibility, you can increase your production by making production facilities. You can have like guild facilities, you can have alliance facilities, and more, right? Now I also want to talk about the player journey, because this is really interesting, right? So with this game, right, to really play the game, you have to purchase NFT heroes and basically fuse them to level them up, perform harder missions, upgrade them, and then you progress, right? And as the player progresses, they'll know that bigger forces are at play. There's this whole alliance and guild system, and there's a really deep kind of gameplay mechanic, right, with the complex economic, social, and strategic endgames. So it's kind of like EVE Online, where you start out as a lowly soldier with your spaceship, and then you progress, and then, you know, there's these big, huge alliances of tens of thousands of people, right? So with their focus, right, day-to-day gameplay is focused on individual players, completion of daily missions. So they talk about the missions, which are essentially these missions you get given and you get rewarded for doing them. And then long-term, the gameplay starts focusing on guilds and guild events. And then there's alliances, which is multiple guilds coming together to have these big alliances, right? Now, as I mentioned, they do have this Imperial pass system. So it's kind of like a game pass. It's like your access to a season, which is 3 months. And essentially with these Imperial passes, it's designed to keep the game fresh for players by giving them new gameplay missions and so on. But it also gives them rewards. And essentially it's like a subscription that you pay for, and then if you obviously play for the game, then you earn that back, you earn more back. And from what I understand, the way you get an Imperial Pass subscription is through staking. So staking your tokens is, I believe, how you get this. So they have this whole interesting Imperial Pass system to get people to keep coming back and keep the game fresh. Now this is really interesting, right? So with this game, not only are they appealing to active play to earn gamers, right, who can earn through basically active gameplay and, playing the game, it's also targeted at non-crypto gamers, where they have this really cool looking game and very engaging, fun gameplay that gets people to really get interested. And they make it where the entry point in the game is off-chain and they don't need an NFT to play, and it's like a guest mode. So they have an easy way for people to try the game, and then they can get into the whole crypto side of it. But they're targeting it at non-crypto gamers, active play to earn gamers, as well as NFT collectors, right? So the NFTs can be leveled up, fused together. You can collect different tiers of land NFTs and build on them. And essentially there's a lot there for NFT collectors who can kind of use the NFT knowledge to buy and sell NFTs and make profit on that. And then there's the gaming guilds and scholars, where NFT lending on-chain brings additional player into the game without them having to pay for it. So the guild and alliance side of it allows people to basically work together to earn more. And there's DAO voting and gameplay bonuses for working as a team in these alliances. So it's essentially something where they're targeting multiple audiences, which is important, because if you just target one of these, the game's not going to work. You need multiple people. You need the non-crypto gamers to really be in there to just play for fun, because if everybody's trying to just play for money, it's not going to work, right? You need people who are playing for fun as well. Otherwise, it's going to be an unbalanced economy. Now, they have a very interesting way of getting people to start testing out the game, which is to actually, they just select 5 heroes to start the game. At the end of the game, they'll see the in-game rewards and a button to claim them once they actually go through the mission. And then this is where they get, asked to join officially. And essentially, it's like an easy onboarding, right? Where you don't need an NFT, you don't need to pay. You just play the game. If you like it, then you get asked, right? And then they have this whole system. This is kind of complicated, but essentially, if they are still on the fence, they're given a link to a Discord. They're told, hey, do you want to talk to a public player relations officer for help, and so on. So essentially, they get pushed further into playing the game. But they are they also have the system where they get basically offered a rare item or a really, cool item, but they need to kind of sign up for the wallet to get it. So they have this whole system where it's free to get started and to try the game out, but then if you want to actually play, you need to set up your wallet and so on. So that's an interesting way to do it, where give them fun first and then onboard them into the game. So let's talk about the NFTs, right? So essentially with their NFT system, they have a bunch of different NFTs. They have essentially these heroes, which are basically the main character types, and they have primary and secondary stats. They have weapons, armor, consumable items, utilities, etc. And then they have these different skill sets. Then they also have agents, right? So agents are kind of the supporters of the hero. The hero is the main member in the squad, and the agents are essentially secondary NFTs. Then you have vehicles that you can own. You also have auxiliary units, right? So these are like secret weapons, right? So these can be kind of like, cyborgs, Onis. They can be, basically the way I see them is like kind of drones. And then you have equipment, you even have weapons that are basically NFTs. And you have a whole system of lending where you can lend out NFTs to other players and share profits. You have the NFT Fusion System where you can combine NFTs by using, essentially multiple types of NFTs, or multiple numbers of NFTs can be combined to build these like rarer and more legendary, NFTs. And then another big thing is, if you're trying to manufacture items for use in the guild and alliance system, you have to use blueprints. So blueprints typically can be acquired from the marketplace, and they typically require a combination of different parts, components, credits, rot, S-rot. So, and then you have to assemble them through these manufacturing factories called facilities, right? So essentially, this is this whole in-game economy system, which is very, very interesting. Now let's talk about the Genesis Drop. This is the first thing you can buy that kind of gets into the game. So these are the 10,000 Genesis drops. They're essentially 2D art, and then there's kind of like the royalty, which is 1%, royal court is 9%, government is 15%, and soldiers are the majority and the least rare. So these are the rarest. And what they have is they give you a land plot when staked in the game. So they essentially give you land in the game. And then staking this Genesis NFT helps you provides small bonuses when you're starting the game. And then these are also kind of more rare. They're the Genesis. I think the big utility here is the land, right? Like you get land in the game, which is really, really valuable. So with the currencies in the game, right? Like I mentioned, there's credits, which is used for obtaining common items, used to wager on racing missions, used to get vehicles, equipment, weapons, and also used to repair structural damage to your buildings by your other opponents. And you basically get this by playing the game, completing missions, and so on. And then the cores, so the cores are used for upgrades, right? They're used in blueprints to upgrade buildings, to upgrade a skill tree, upgrade an agent skill tree. Cores are basically your upgrade mechanism. And again, these are both off-chain mechanisms, and you again get these from playing the game. And with cores, you can steal them from players, complete missions successfully, and you get them. You'll recycle items, equipment, and vehicles, so you can kind of trade them in for cores. And then cores are obviously kind of useful. So these are off-chain, these are not stored on-chain. And the reason for this is obviously it saves on transaction fees and so on. But then there's these on-chain currencies, which is ROT, which is the on-chain token, which is used to make purchases in the NFT marketplace. It's used to ascend any squad element NFT, which burns the previous NFT to create a new one. It's used to exchange directly for stablecoins, so this is kind of how you earn. You can stake it to earn more yield on your ROT, and you can stake ROT to build a guild. So you obtain ROT with obviously exchanging tokens for ROT on exchange, you stake ROT for additional ROT over time, or you sell NFTs on the ROT marketplace. You can also, exchange your credits for ROT. So there are multiple ways you get it, but really it's for playing the game. You can earn your credits that you can then exchange, and then also you can earn these NFTs and get these NFTs in game. Now, what's SROT? SROT is the governance token, right? Which is basically staked ROT. So when you stake your ROT and lock it up, you will be able to get SROT. Then you can use that to start basically build alliances. You can use it to get really rare and limited NFTs. And then additionally, in the future, they want to use this. You can stake SROT to actually have additional DAO voting rights. So it becomes a governance token of sorts. Now, one thing that the team does want to do is build a DAO long term, and essentially the DAO will kind of control the following, which is the monetary policy. So basically the player community can own the DAO, and then they can decide on the monetary policy of the ROT token, which is inflation and emission schedules, token allocation of the treasury, so like game development, reward incentives, and ecosystem fund deployment. So ecosystem fund would be like basically a fund to encourage people to build out the game further, distributions to token holders, community management, and so on. So obviously this is very early level. They say this. As they start out, it's a much more centralized game as the gaming studio is building it out, but long term, they want to make it more decentralized through this DAO, which will control some of these game governance mechanics. That's a brief summary of the game. Now, what do I think of it, right? I think the gameplay and fun factor looks like a 9 out of 10. It looks really fun. The way they describe it, the footage looks like this would be a lot of fun. And the in-depthness and the in-depth nature of the white paper is really cool, right? Like if you read it, there's so many different mechanics. This seems like it'll be really addicting if they can pull this off. The team's a 10 out of 10, extremely experienced. They have the deep gaming experience. They have the deep, basically business experience as well. And the in-game economy looks very solid. They've thought things out. They have their off-chain currency, on-chain currency. They've figured out that they need to make a fun game to attract non-crypto gamers to balance out the gamers who are going to be playing to earn. Because if everybody's trying to play to earn, there's no demand for it, right? You basically can't have a game economy where there's just people who want to earn the token. You want people who want to spend the token, and those are going to come from non-crypto gamers who play the game because it's fun and it's an addicting experience. If you look at EVE Online, people in the EVE Online, they play the game for fun, not to earn it, right? So that's what they're trying to build here. And then the last piece is, I didn't really cover the lore or the world building. If you actually look through their white paper, they have a really interesting backstory to this whole game, and the lore is there, right? So I don't want to cover that because this video is already long enough, but I like that as well. So overall, look, their Discord has around 1,000 people right now. There's barely anybody in there because they haven't started marketing yet, right? So I would highly recommend get involved in their Discord, go in there, start chatting to them. This is a game that, if you want to get whitelist spots, this is your chance right now, because once they start pushing on marketing, this thing's going to explode. This is a freaking great project, right? There's not many projects I find that blow my mind like this, right? So I would definitely say this is a project I'm very excited about. Get involved, join their Discord, and I think this will be a really, really fun game to play. So this is one to watch, guys. And definitely I'm going to be minting this if I can. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button, and also follow me on Twitter because I do post alpha on there. I do post the games I'm kind of looking at right now. So my Twitter link will be below as well. It's _the Shash, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.